Alright, YouTube, I wanted to explain a little bit about atheistic Satanism because the term confuses some people, and the idea of spirituality divorced from actual religion. Looking at Satanism as a philosophy totally devoid of religious context, which it functions for many people within Satanism. Because here's the way that I look at Satanism, and people don't seem to understand this in many cases. To me, Satanism is a philosophy. It's like Buddhism to Buddhists, to many Buddhists. It's not a theistic path, that is, that I believe in Satan or the devil, that I derive some dark power from this ethereal entity through magic or ritual or sacrifice or whatever the case may be. I don't believe in those things. I think they're absolute nonsense. I'm an atheist, but I'm also a Satanist, and it's possible to be both. I don't believe in God, or the Bible, or the Quran, or the Talmud, or any of the other religious texts which have been laid down over the centuries by confused, brainwashed idiots who had nothing better to do than to lie to each other and tell them the boogeyman would get them if they didn't burn witches on Sunday, or throw stones at lepers, or any of the other things which religious people love to do. I don't believe in those things. I believe in atheism. That is, I believe that the world was not created by a divine being. I don't believe in any divine beings. I don't believe in Pan or Set or Zeus either. I would point out that the only difference between a figure such as Zeus and a figure such as Jesus is that in the current modern age, a great deal of the population believes in Jesus, and a great deal of the population does not believe in Zeus. There's no difference between the two. There's just as much evidence that Zeus exists and created the world in ancient Greek philosophy, how they would have explained it as having been created, that he gave birth to, Diana or whoever by splitting his skull open when he had a headache, and that all of these various pantheistic gods exist and govern different aspects of our lives. There's just as much evidence for that as there is that Jesus died on a cross for your sins and now sits at the right hand of God. That is to say, there's no evidence. I don't believe in any theistic concept. I believe in an afterlife to some extent. I believe that there's a logical continuation of existence in some quality or fashion after death. But I again divorce this from religious concepts in that I don't believe that it has anything to do with a divine entity. I don't believe it has anything to do with any human philosophy which has been currently written down. I don't believe that any religious or spiritual group has adequately explained concepts such as the afterlife or reincarnation, karma, magic, any of these things. I don't believe they've been adequately described by any existent religion or spiritual group to which I can identify with these groups and say, yes, they've got the right idea. Also, there's really no way to test such things, to give evidence or credence to different claims within these ideas, so it's really not even worth supposing in the first place. I believe that there's some continuation after death. I have no evidence of this being the case. That's just my own feeling. I have no problem with that. I don't think that I have any specific knowledge on it that allows me to elaborate on what I think that is, because I don't know. And that's another thing that's different within the confines of atheism and any of the various philosophies which atheists might go after. There are atheists who carry out a very Buddhist philosophy, sort of an Eastern spiritual life. They don't believe in any of the gods of the East. They don't believe in a god. But they take that philosophy and they say, this philosophy is something I can identify with. I like it, and or it seems to me to be moral and righteous. I live my life according to some of these strictures. They divorce it from the theistic concept. I look at Satanism the same way. I look at the satanic philosophy. I say, I agree in general with most of the philosophies which Satanism has laid out. And I would say not LaVeyan Satanism, because I've never even read the Satanic Bible and probably never would have reason to. I create my own satanic philosophy based around the general strictures of Satanism, the idea of individuality, of Satan as a cosmic rebel, of the idea, the very true idea, that all progress is driven by malcontent, rebellion, and violence. I look at those things and incorporate them into my life, not because I believe in Satan, not because I adhere to the Church of Satan, but because I agree with those philosophies already. And so I call myself a Satanist, even though it's a very independent path that I follow. I don't necessarily agree with many other Satanists on a lot of my ideals. Now, spirituality is a different topic. There is a difference between religion and spirituality. And this is something which has been covered up and not covered by all of the mainstream religious groups in the Western world. That is to say that to these mainstream religions, Catholicism, Islam, Judaism, the Protestants, whichever group, whichever general group or subgroup you happen to listen to, they will tell you the only way to live a true, full, meaningful spiritual life is through membership in their own spiritual circle. That is to say, to use their rituals, their form of prayer, their God, their places of worship. The things which they believe in are to them the only places which are spiritual. A Catholic would not consider a mosque to be a place of true spirituality. They would say it would be perhaps pseudo-spiritual in essence, following various ritualistic guidelines, but that it doesn't actually have any power in the spiritual world by virtue of the fact that they believe they're following a false god. And a Muslim would say the same about a Catholic church. That is to say that each of these faiths, the thing which unites them and ultimately at the same time divides them, is that they believe in the essence of their religious path, their specific religious doctrines, being the only ones which are accurate. None of them have any evidence for their claims. None of them can say, yes, well, lo and behold, science or philosophy or logic or something has proven my path is right. None of them have any evidence for any of their claims. They win converts by appealing to people's emotions, by telling them, generally, for instance, Christians, they'll tell people, you are sinful, you are weak, you are degraded, you are going to hell, all these terrible things upon you. Convert and believe in Jesus Christ. And the Muslims will tell you something similar and say, well, you're degraded and a terrible person. You must live by the strictures of Islam. And the Jews would do the same thing. These groups only win converts by scaring people and making people sad. They appeal to negative emotions to win converts. I find it funny in one sense that Christians talk about, oh, the love of Jesus unites us in the church, and we feel so great that we're going to heaven, while 99% of the population goes to hell. And they say all these wonderful things, oh, we heal people, and we can prophesy, and we can fly and rule the world, and all of these wonderful claims that they make. And they act so airy and happy, and oh, we're a nice little community. But at the same time, when they go out to convert people, primarily they do so by saying, you're going to hell, fire and brimstone. You're a terrible person. You're going to roast eternally with Satan, and Satan is your master, and you're choosing to go to hell by denying Jesus. And all of these things that they say, it just seems rather strange when you look at their religion. But the concept of spirituality is not the same as religion. It's possible to be a spiritual individual and have no religion at all, because the spiritual was taken over, hijacked by organized religion. And ironically, I'll find myself agreeing with some Christians on this, and some Muslims and Jews as well. There are Christians, Muslims, Jews, and other people within other religious paths that have divorced the idea of spirituality. They believe in the God of those religions and the basic precepts of those gods, but they divorce it from the organized, ritualized, dogmatic approach which is shown by those religions. Christians saying, well, the church is just perverted and corrupted, and I basically just practice on my own. Well, that's great. I would say they're only taking it halfway, because in one sense, if they're still reading the Bible was again compiled at Nicaea by a bunch of drunken Catholics in 325 AD, so they're still using the same rudimentary texts and the same rudimentary ideals as the organized religion itself, but at least they're trying to be independent. And that's what's great about Satanism. It's an independent philosophy you build, at least in part, yourself. I would argue that the Christians and Muslims and so forth that are divorcing spirituality from religion are indeed satanic. They are Satanists. They may believe in those, they're theistic Satanists in a way. They're believing in maybe a god, some creator force. They generally see it as a distant deistic force, which has very little to do with one's life, has no specific commands other than don't be an asshole. This could be interpreted as satanic in many ways. I would agree with the organized religions like the Catholic Church in saying that these apostates that no longer worship at their altars are indeed indulging in Satan, because it is satanic. But spirituality and religion aren't the same thing. Religion hijacked spirituality. There was spirituality long before organized religion existed. The first recorded instances of proven organized religious festival are predated by evidence of shamanism by many, many thousands of years. People taking hallucinogenic substances. Of course, you can understand that the use of things like fire or the wheel would have seemed spiritual back when they were first invented. Anything which man couldn't adequately explain. He knew he could create fire. He didn't understand how it worked. So that was a spiritual concept at the time. It served a rudimentary physical purpose, but it was a spiritual concept. That's why you always get this image of these proto-humans dancing around a fire naked and, ingesting mushrooms or whatever. It was part of their religious rituals. It was something powerful that they could control now, but couldn't fully understand, and so it fell within the realms of the spiritual. But they had not organized a religion. They were still operating on a tribal level. They probably didn't have what you would consider gods. They probably had what you would consider symbols, archetypes, figures. The Venus figurines, of course, are a great example of this, perhaps representing fertility. But there was no evidence of an actual religion built around these figures. We find that first in Anatolia and parts of the Middle East. Of course, you find the earliest temple in Anatolia, the earliest recorded instance of what they can reasonably prove was a temple. But the thing is, I don't believe in God or Satan. I practice magic, but again, I've explained before, my magic is symbolic in nature. It feeds off of human psychological energy in a scientific manner. I don't believe that there are actually demons involved in my magic. That's a ludicrous idea that someone would have to be completely brain dead to believe in. The idea that Satan is going to stretch forth his dark hand and, smite your enemies because you call upon him in a ritual is stupid. Because there is no Satan. There's no devil, Satan, Lucifer, Zeus, God, Allah, Jehovah, Jesus. These figures are non-existent. None of them exist. There probably never was a Jesus Christ. And Muhammad was just some idiot riding around in the desert raiding caravans for a living who suddenly started going schizo on everyone and marrying 9-year-olds and putting forth his ramblings, his lunatic ramblings, in a form that they later had to retranslate to make them readable. Sort of like Hitler writing Mein Kampf. Took someone else to edit it so that people could actually understand what the fuck he was talking about. So my thoughts... I'm an atheist. I will never be anything but an atheist. I'm a former Christian. I used to be involved in that cult. And, we drank grape juice, not wine. We drank the wine and ate the communion bread. And we prayed and did faith healings and all of these wonderful things Christians supposedly can do. It's all a sham. It's showmanship. It's no different than going to a fucking circus. That's all that Christianity is about. That's all that Islam is about. You can see videos all over YouTube uploaded by Muslims or Christians or Jews or whatever, and they show, demon-possessed people and angels in the sky and people with jinn inside of them. Jinn being the desert, sort of semi-demonic, desert-dwelling beings of Islamic lore, not as in jinn as in the drink. And all of these supernatural nonsense things that they put on YouTube, and a casual stroll through the weird side of YouTube will show you that these people don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's just absolutely ridiculous. The belief in a God, if it makes you happy, go ahead and believe in your God. But don't expect me to convert to your belief of God when I will always believe I'm more intelligent than you if you believe in a God in the first place. And if your only way of trying to convert me is to tell me I'm going to suffer after I die, which you can't prove in the first place, and that I have to repent and turn to Jesus or Allah or, Brahma or any of these other mythical figures which you've dreamed up, which you don't even understand the linguistic terms involved in their creation, you don't understand the anthropological concepts which go into creating a religion in the first place, I can see right through these things. I'm not going to be converted to some dirt-worshipping cult that was invented in the Iron Age by people who thought the world was semi-flat and populated by unicorns. It's just not going to happen. I will continue my spiritual path, regardless of what other people's input is into that path. I don't care if other people consider it wrong or evil. And I don't care if people threaten me, I'm going to come to your house and kill your family. I've had people message me with things like that. It really doesn't concern me. I'm absolutely secure. I'm protected by my own power. I don't give a shit what other people want to do to me. And I don't give a shit what your gods want to do to me either. Because if your gods are so powerful, why haven't they taken over the planet yet? And why is it that no matter how hard you beg, no Christian can make their God appear to you? Why is it that God used to appear to people all the time in the Old Testament? Why does he never do it now? It's just bullshit. Did God lose his power as soon as people started using logic? In a way, yes. Because once people started using logic, they understood that all the things they used to interpret as God's intervention were actually just things like earthquakes. It's just seismic activity. Volcanoes. There's magma coming out of the earth. It's not God talking to me. A tornado, that's just wind. It's not actually God's penis swirling around in the sky and moving towards me trying to destroy my house because I'm a sodomite. People understand these things now. So yes, God takes less of a role in our lives, but people still cling to their friggin' gods and go to church on Sunday and do all these weird things. I mean, they say that Satanism is weird. Look at what you do. You drink wine and eat bread and you call it blood and flesh. You believe that a crucified carpenter from the Iron Age is the reason you no longer have to go to this mythical hell, which is actually a pagan location. And if you studied linguistics at all, you would understand that. Look at the Bach Saga. They'll tell you where the word hell is from. But people won't want to do that because they might think that it's sinful to even research such things. You see, Christians and Jews and Muslims and so forth, here's one last parting word. They think it's actually a sin to question their religions. Even questioning their religions is a sin. You see how the brainwashing in their cults work? Even to question, to even go and look at the evidence involved is a sin in some communities within these religious groups. So that if a person is a Christian, they have to hide it from all of their loved ones and their church community that they're even thinking about questioning their faith. And they're going to feel bad in doing so. It's a psychological torment for them. I can remember going through that. Well, God's going to send me to hell if I read about Wicca. I got a copy of the Necronomicon. I thought it was awesome. And I started losing my faith about that time. I was like, this is a lot more cool than the Bible. Then I actually looked at the evidence involved in religion. I said, well, looks like Christianity is just a sham anyway. And it really is. Christianity and Islam, all these religions are shams. And anyone who tries to claim that you're going to go to hell when you die, ask them how it's moral for their God to create such a place in the first place. If their God is all-powerful and all-wise and controls everything, aren't you predestined for hell in the first place? If you go there, weren't you always predestined? If he knows everything ahead of time, he knows who's going to hell and who's going to heaven. I guess God is just.